Welcome back to a Students Declassified Market Survival Guide, the professional segment of the Intentional Intern Podcast. March is Women's History Month, and to kick off this amazing month, we have an equally amazing woman as this week's guest, Crystle Johnson. Crystle is a global diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, liberation coach, speaker, and founder of the phenomenal podcast, We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. Throughout the episode, Crystle and I have a candid conversation on topics like how she found her path to DEI work, navigating professional spaces as Black women, creating sustainable change in corporate, her framework for liberation, and more. Personally, this episode for me was so reflective and healing, and I hope this episode can serve you in a similar way. For those who want to connect with Crystle, you can find her LinkedIn and the podcast YouTube channel down below. With that, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Crystle. How are you?
I'm great, Amaya. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. I know you and I have connected via LinkedIn. It's just the social platform these days, but I'm so excited for our audience to get to connect with you as well on a different level throughout our episode today.
I love it. And I know you know that LinkedIn is my corner of the internet, so I'm here for it.
Definitely. And I would love if you could introduce yourself to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Crystle Johnson, of course. I have been in DEI for over a decade, and I'm also the founder of We Ain't Dying for This. It is a podcast community for Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. And I came to We Ain't Dying for This because, as we all know, DEI work is God's work, basically. It is thankless work. It's always a lot going on. It's ever evolving, and it's gotten worse over the years in terms of criticism and politicizing the work. So, especially in 2020, when the murder of George Floyd happened, I definitely burnt out and saw a lot of other DEI practitioners and other people that are doing heart-centered work, just doing a lot. Like, we ramped up too quickly, and many of us burnt out. So I created We Ain't Dying for This as a love letter to Black women to help them to understand what liberation could look like, what being still can do for you, and what a soft life could look like for you. Because we're never going to solve all the world's problems, but how can you have your little corner of liberation, your little corner of peace to continue to get you through?
Radically soft. I love that, of a radically soft life. Where did that concept, like when you were feeling burnt out from DEI, where did that concept come from? Was that just an immediate thought of, hey, I want to do something around this work, and then the podcast just kind of came to fruition from there? Or were there other ideas that you were thinking about?
Yeah, so We Ain't Dying for This is something that I've always said. So it is literally a phrase that I have said when somebody is just doing the most, when organizations are asking for a whole lot and not giving a lot back, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, or even if I'm talking to someone else, I'll say, we ain't dying for this. Like, we need to take care of ourselves and put ourselves first. So that's how the title of the podcast came about. I'll say that it was seeds planted back in 2020, but I actually didn't launch the podcast until 2024. I actually started off with retreats. So I've hosted a few retreats for Black women internationally. I was feeling like I wanted to do more, but I wasn't doing enough. And obviously, there's some perfection in there, some overachieving, which I think many of us can relate to that. And I kind of froze for almost a whole year on what am I going to do? It's not perfect enough yet. I need to keep working on it. Like, there's still more to be done. And finally, at the end of 2023, I said to myself, I was like, I cannot go a whole nother year like this, because it was so overwhelming to be on this hamster wheel the entire year, just cycling through not the same ideas, but new ideas, and I was procrastinating. It was just so much. It was heavy. So I said that I wanted my word in 2024 to be liberation. And that's when I decided it all came together. The thought of we ain't dying for this, focusing on liberation, Black women understanding what liberation means to them, and how it can support them in their freedom. And it just came together as a LinkedIn Live event that I decided to do. I was terrified to do it because I thought, who do people actually want to hear about this? I don't know. Are people going to listen? I don't know. So I launched it and said it's only going to be 30 minutes because I had spent a whole year like trying to be perfect. So when I finally launched it, a lot of people resonated with it and it became longer over time. So now I have episodes that are hour long for a podcast that was only intended to be 30 minutes.
I love the gift of when things, one, just work out, when you decide, enough is enough. I want to do this. This is something that's been sitting. And then just to see it blossom into something completely bigger than what you originally thought it could be. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it makes me think about, and I didn't watch the Grammys last night, but it makes me think about what I've heard about Beyonce's acceptance speech, where she basically said, chase the thing that you want to do. Like, just do the thing. And she's so right, because usually when there's something that's nagging at you or something that you really want to do, but then there's like people in your ear being noisy saying, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't do this. And then you even have yourself in your own head based on experiences that you've had, fear, etc., saying, well, maybe you should wait, or maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that. But actually just deciding to just do the thing, like you never know what's on the other side. And maybe the thing you want to do might suck, but what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't?
What if it doesn't? Literally. And I think Beyonce's speech and her wins in particular were very interesting because people, and I think this also kind of goes into it for Black women as well, in a similar pathway of, for Beyonce, people were just like, she's Beyonce. I mean, she already does XYZ. Like, I don't think she deserves this, blase, blase, blase. And it wasn't even people in her ear, but literally the entire public or people who disapproved of her win in country music saying, this just doesn't seem fair. It seems like she got the award because people are scared. But people were surprised to see that Beyonce had a genuine shock and reaction because of how long she's been denied in that space and how she's publicly talked about being denied in that space, being pushed out of that space. So for her, it means something completely different. It means something completely different for Black people. It means something completely different for Black people and the history of country. It means something completely different to the rest of America. If you're not African American or you don't have Southern roots and understanding where she's coming from or understanding the history and the heritage of what this album was really about. And I heard someone talk about it today of like, this was a real body of work album that we haven't had in a long time, because it's not just something that's culturally transcending within pop culture and music in that way, but more so about actually going back and reteaching people history, reteaching history that was thought to be erased or not accessible to people because people thought it just did not exist. And so it brings up a whole different like myriad of points of what this album really stood for and how many times it's going to go over people's head and they're truly not seeing the vision or seeing the point. That she kept going against not just critics, but people who were against history.
Yes, absolutely. As you were talking, I was like, art should imitate life. Like, I remember working at different companies where it's like an entertainment company. And one of the goals of the people in the company is that they want to be able to teach people truth, history, like, how is it that you should show up as a good human being? Like, they want to use their product to do those things. So, exceptional, Beyonce, if you're listening. We love you, girl. And we learned. We absolutely did learn. You taught, you slayed. You did all the things.
In every way.
Yes.
In every way. And I think it's so interesting for you to talk about like art imitates life and the way that we also take a lot of our art from our experiences and in our history in a way. And with what you do for work, that is almost kind of like your everyday thing. It may not be art all the time, but really working to create different experiences for others, creating new history, things that are
Yeah.
able to have everyone included and being accessible and available for everyone. And I actually wanted to ask you about, did you always think you were going to go into DEI and end up doing what you're doing now within the work,
Mm.
or was there another vision that you had before that?
Girl, absolutely not. I am a first generation college student, graduate, professional, six-figure earner, multi six-figure earner in my family. I am the definition of a first. So anything I've ever done in my life has literally been through trial and error. It's been through trying different things and just trying to figure it out. So I got my MBA in HR because my first real job was as an assistant store manager at Walmart. And I had a market HR manager who had an MBA in HR, and I enjoyed like how she interacted with people. And in my mind at that time, I need more degrees. Now, would I recommend that today? No. Um, but then I was like, oh, I need another degree. So this market HR manager, she has an MBA in HR. I should get an MBA in HR as well. So I go get the MBA in HR. And when I graduate, I am looking for HR jobs. No one would hire me because HR, I would say, is like one of the most gate kept professions that there is. Like, it is so hard to break into HR if you don't know somebody that knows somebody. And people who get in like on their first try, kudos to you, because many of us are still struggling to try to get into HR. So I'm applying for all these HR jobs and nobody wants to hire me. I actually went, and I've never told this story out loud, but I went into a temp agency because I kept applying and I wasn't hearing anything back. And unfortunately, the woman that I interacted with was a Black woman. And around this time, I think I was like 25, maybe, and still just very green, not really understanding like, what is life? What am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. I'm just trying to get through the freaking day. So I get in there, she looks at my resume, and she basically tells me nobody's checking for me. Like, your resume is light, nobody's checking for you, you're not going to get an HR job, is basically what she said to me. I cried when I left that office because I was like, damn, I just spent all of this money in student loans and getting this MBA in HR. And now I can't get an HR job. What am I going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I did keep applying. And what I finally got was an offer to be an HR assistant for $11 an hour. I'm a grown person at this point. $11 an hour is no, absolutely. I can't do it. I can't do it because I'm making more money in my customer service job that I'm working than $11 an hour. So I had to start thinking differently about experience and how to gain experience. So what I did at the organization was I started their first Pride Employee Resource Group chapter. And because I grew up in Virginia, which I call the South, I know some people are like, that's not the South. It is. There were a lot of people who said, what does being gay have to do with work, basically? So from the very beginning, I had to prove why it was important to center LGBTQ people. And whether that was employees or consumers, I had to make that point. I had to be strategically connected to HR. I had to be strategically connected to sales and marketing and legal. There were things that I had to do to make sure that people saw the value in this population. And that's how I got into DEI. That's how I got into DEI. But it was not on purpose. Long story, long.
You say it's not on purpose, but it was with a purpose.
Uh-huh. Preacher,
Mhm.
Maya.
And I love that you also talked about a very, I feel like it's unknown, but a lot of people who are students right now in HR know this. HR is hard to get into. HR is
Mm-hmm.
extremely difficult to get into. So the fact that you were saying it was hard to get in then, it has not changed now. It is completely one of the most, like, I love that you said gate kept. I always use the word like spoken but unspoken for type of
Mm-hmm.
industries, because people always say, oh, HR is easy and y'all don't even do anything and blah, 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 blah. Or you just hire and fire and that's it and blah, blah, blah. And then when you realize the umbrella of all the things that they care about and all the people
Yeah.
you have to take care of, all of the different bottom lines that you're having to work with because you are handling every single part of the organization, whether you're directly involved or not,
Mm-hmm.
it is not just an administrative job where people are filing papers or being recruiters. It is so much more than
Yeah.
that. And people
Yeah.
don't understand it, but it is
They do
very
not.
difficult. It's so difficult to get into. I still can't say why it is. I mean, I'm relatively early career myself, so I can't
Yeah.
give any big answers yet, but I definitely can understand, and it is definitely felt all the time.
But I think HR, like many other roles, HR is worse. But I will say that the people who come from a certain background or identity, they are looking for people who look like them. They're looking for people who they feel comfortable with. And if you don't look like them, and if you don't come from a similar background, even like going to the same school, like having the same interests, and obviously HR should be watching out for bias, but no one's perfect, you know? So I feel like a lot of times what happens is, oh, I hired this person because I felt comfortable with them, or I hired this person because it's my doctor's niece's daughter, you know? So there's a lot of, I think, a lot of nepotism that happens in HR, and then that it just continues to flow through organizations. That's my perspective, but that's a crystal view.
It's interesting just to hear that dialogue that's unspoken about HR most of the time, and I'm glad that you brought it up. And I think there are also a couple of unspoken rules for DEI as well, particularly in the form of people not realizing how much of a wide scope DEI covers. Looking at
Mm-hmm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion from completely different levels. And then if you're including belonging or DEIBAJ or however people interpret it or utilize it within their organization, what are some, I'm going to say, like, what are some like uncommon or things that people think are uncommon that aren't like relative to DEI that actually are
Mm-hmm.
that you have come across?
That's a good question. So I think that a lot of times when people think about DEI, they often think about it in a very superficial way. Not to say that the things that are on the surface don't matter, because they do. Like Heritage Month very much matter. Employee resource groups, they very much matter. But I think the things that you often hear from people that are in employee resource groups is that they're thinking about the employee life cycle. They're thinking about the hiring, the promotions, the firing, the development, like all these different things. They're thinking about those things and how people who look like them are moving through that cycle or the pipeline. They're thinking about those things. So what I think most people don't think about is that equity and inclusion should be weaved into every part of the employee life cycle. So those different people that are in the organization from all these different identity groups, they feel able to progress and advance through the employee life cycle. And I don't think that that always has to be a program, because there are lots of organizations who will say, well, we see that there aren't a lot of women in leadership, so let's build a leadership program for women. And I don't think that that is always the answer. I think the answer needs to be, we need to look at our promotion process, our performance development process. Who's elevating through that process, and why are they elevating through that process? Who's not elevating through that process, and what are the gaps and opportunities that exist on why they're not elevating, and fix that. Like that should be, you should be focused on the root cause of why these people are not moving through and others are, and not creating a program to say, I want to create a program for this particular group because we see this gap. If you fix the process, if you fix the policy, if you fix the practice, then you're able to, what do they say? Like, it'll lift all boats. A rising tide lifts all boats. So then you're able to address what's going wrong for everybody. So I think that's probably something that I would say most people don't understand as DEI, because people are always thinking about it in terms of food and fun and celebrations and all these other things. And it's like, yeah, like we are celebrating identities, but there's also systemic work that needs to be done as well to ensure those people from all identities and backgrounds are able to progress and be retained at the company, to feel like they belong, to feel like they're valued, to feel like they're welcome. Those things need to be addressed too.
It's like fixing the actual wound that's there versus just putting like the Band-Aid on it for that little temporary fix.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And organizations are often more likely to put the Band-Aid on because it's fast, right? It's quick. It's like, oh, we can have a quick win. That is a phrase that I've heard my entire career, and often I like cringe when I hear it, because I'm like, quick wins are not sustainable. And what you want to see when it comes to DEI is sustained change. And you are not going to see sustained change if all you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it. And then, oh, I'll come back to it later. Like, we got this quick win. And then, you know, it goes right back to how it was before once the program ends.
That's a great point, talking about sustainability in a way that benefits everyone, not just people who are moving through the employee life cycle right now, but people who may be going through it in the future, or maybe people, you know, after those people leave, and people who were still there while they were there and you guys were implementing all of these processes. This also impacts them too in a very positive way. And I want to ask you, what does sustainable change in your own version or your perfect world, what does sustainable change look like right now? Whether that's in HR or if that's just in maybe the DEI space, what do you think is a form of sustainable change, like in a perfect world, that you could see?
So a form of sustainable change for me, and I'm going to use this example because I think it's important and it speaks to what you just said about new people coming to the organization. So if an organization sees that there are lots of people who are constantly leaving the organization, retention rates are high, don't matter who you are, the retention rate is through the roof. You know that you have a leaky bucket, that there is something happening in the organization that you need to address in order to make sure that people are not leaving. Let's assume the thing that's wrong is like culture. So leaders are not being held accountable and people don't feel psychologically safe to speak up. They feel like they're going to be retaliated against. This is just an example because it could be tons of other things. If you fix that thing, if you fix it and make sure that leaders are held accountable, if you fix it to make sure that part of your values is that we want people to feel psychologically safe, we want people to feel safe to fail, we want people to feel safe to challenge, and you actually are practicing those things, and when those things aren't practiced, you hold people accountable, now you're not only sustaining the people that are there, like you're retaining the people that are already in the organization, but also the new people who are coming into the organization, they're coming into a culture of accountability and a culture of psychological safety. So those people feel they feel welcome, they feel valued, they feel heard, they feel like they can show up authentically. And then that is sustainable change because you're building the space or the environment, the culture for the people that are there and the people that are coming in. And I like to call that like cleaning up your house first. And I think a lot of times organizations don't do that. They don't think about cleaning up their house before they invite guests in. They just want to invite the guests because they're looking to fill jobs, to increase representation, whatever the case is. But if your house is not in order, those people are going to just leave.
And there has to be that form of also the people who are supposed to be instituting these changes and making the changes, for them to have a culture of psychological safety as well. Because if we can't get it together, if we don't feel safe, we can't empower other people to feel safe. So then it'll constantly become a thing of, they're not cleaning up their house. They're still inviting people to come in. But then when these people are saying like, hey, this kind of smells weird, or hey, this isn't clean, the first response is not going to be, let me clean it, let me fix it up. It's going to be, it's my house. It's literally just going to be, it's my house. I mean, what are you trying to judge me for? It's not even yours. And then I think, and that comes into the same play of, we're paying you. So what are you arguing about? Hey, we might be a super great company. And it could be literally one of the most top companies in the world, or a startup, or something that's amazing on the outside. And then it's just like, then people, you're sad when people want to move and don't wonder why, because there's not that also reflection of accountability in the reflecting inwards to, am I creating sustainable change that is making other people feel psychologically safe? Or is it enabling me to have to not think about psychological safety where I have to make a change amongst my team?
Totally. People don't like to hear that their baby is ugly. That's how I like to put it. They don't want to hear that their baby is ugly. So they are going to fight tooth and nail to be like, no, it's not my process. It's you, or it's this person, or it's that. Like, these are all the external factors that are causing this thing not to work well, rather than taking a look at themselves and going back to the drawing board to say, you know what, we probably could have done this instead of that. And I think that just speaks to, just culture, our culture in America in general. There is just a lack of accountability, I think, in general. Like, people just lack accountability, period, because people don't like to be wrong. People fear being wrong. And it's okay to be wrong sometimes. It truly is okay to be wrong. Nobody's going to die because you were wrong, unless you're a doctor, maybe. But most of the time, nobody's going to die. Everything's going to be fine. Just fix it. And I think people just don't like being wrong.
And it all kind of boils down to the emotions. What emotions are you ignoring? What emotions are making you feel uncomfortable right now? And that's something I like to study on my downtime, of just like why we react the way that we react. And it stemmed from me looking at myself when I had someone, it was the version of, hey, like, this is my house. What are you complaining about? And then they looked at me and they said, I'm going to help you clean your house, but like, we have to work together to figure out. So it was a situation of like, we're going to figure this out together, to where I really wanted to understand how people react the way that they do. And it's interesting as a Black woman having emotions in general, because you're not only worried about how you look, like how you look to yourself, but you have to not that you want to, you have to, and you need to worry about how other people are looking at how you react to something. And it wasn't until one of my other internships where luckily I had like really great people around me who would tell me in different instances of, hey, this could be perceived this way. This could be perceived that way. They're like, we know, because we're Black women, that's not what you meant. Truthfully, many people will know that that's not what you meant. But when it comes to the right one, and we all know what it means with the right one, it may not be the right one, but when it comes to the right one, and when it's someone that you need, having to monitor your emotions or monitor your actions way more than I thought I would ever. And that was a huge shock to me, because it really showcased to me how much we have to not necessarily stifle, but almost like reserve parts of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes. First, I want to say I'm sorry that happened to you. But yes, we often do, and it's worse many times for Black women who have to come into spaces and not be who you are. I was talking to someone earlier today about a previous leader that I've had, and also it was like a post on LinkedIn recently, and we were talking about truth. And the great thing about Black women is that we tell the truth all the time. We're going to tell you the truth. And while we might tell you that truth tactfully, we might tell it to you nicely, it's always going to be received in a way that is negative. It's always going to be received in a way that is aggressive, especially if it is not positive feedback. If it's constructive feedback, people are going to take it a certain way. And many people don't like truth tellers. Truth tellers are going to rock the boat because they are making that dirt visible in your house. They done pulled up the chair cover and said, "What is this on the chair? Oh, you didn't sweep this spot." And that's not exactly what they're doing, but that's how people are feeling. Like they're feeling like, oh, you're like looking under stuff and now I'm exposed. I'm exposed now. So truth is often something that gets us in trouble because people don't like to hear the truth. And I was also watching an Instagram video the other day, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well. It's like many times we may not want to share how our weekend went. We're not friends. We are coworkers. So even if you're showing up in a way that is professional, you're sharing like some high level, oh, I had a great weekend, I went to the spa, or, I just watched a few movies on Netflix. Many times people feel like that's not enough. You're not sharing enough about yourself. So now you're not a team player. Now you're all these other negative words to describe you because you won't open up and give me all of the information about your life. So there are definitely many different scenarios and things that happen within organizations that Black women, Black people, even people of color in general have to deal with as they are in organizations. I'm just trying to come to work and do my job. But oftentimes that's not enough, and people want to see more from you. My suggestion for people is to do what makes you feel comfortable. Do what makes you feel comfortable.
Point blank. At the end of the day, you have to live with it. And I would rather live being who I am and walking out the door okay with that. And, we can have any further conversations later if it's, that much of a disruptor, I will say. Disruptor is the better word to use. But I enjoy hearing you talk about just do what is good for you and Black women telling the truth. I really value that you said that statement of Black women do tell the truth, whether we tell it to you nicely or we tell it to you strategically, because we understand regardless of how that would be perceived, things still need to be said. There's still things that need to be moved along. There's a bigger purpose to what I'm saying than just to you. And that is always the case when it comes to when we're saying something. It's not only something to benefit us, but it's usually to benefit everyone around us as well, because we're trying to move things for everyone. But I think that's just part of our DNA. In our nature.
Yeah,
we care.
Definitely. And often too much. We often care way too much, which is why I'm so proud of Black women who have decided to take a collective breath, a collective pause, and say, this is not my lesson to learn. So I'm going to sit back. I'm going to be here. I'm going to do what I can, the things to support my community. But beyond that, I'm not overexerting myself anymore because we have tried to save the world way too many times. And people, unfortunately, do not listen to Black women. And maybe one day they will.
That's all that we can hope for at this point, because we cannot do it by ourselves and we cannot do it alone. And that brings me to thinking about, like you said, it's almost like the great rest right now, the great step back, and people just saying, hey, I'm doing what's best for me right now. And
Yeah.
seeing the uproar from that of, you're doing what's best for you. When in normal settings, I mean, we say that all the time, like, do what's best for you, do what
Yeah.
makes you comfortable. And it lends to something you said earlier about looking at the different forms of liberation and reframing that, especially for Black women, and what liberation looks like. And I would love for you to touch a little bit more on your podcast in what is a radically soft life? Where did that come from? Was that just from the burnout? Like, what does that mean? Has it changed? What a radically soft life is? How was that talked about throughout the podcast? All of the things.
Yeah, really, like radically soft life does not mean you on a jet plane. It does not mean that you're at the spa. Like, it doesn't mean those things. Radically soft means that you are caring for yourself, that you are looking inward, that you are focused on you. And for us as Black women, that is radical because, as you mentioned before, it's part of our DNA to want to take care of everybody, to solve the world's problems. But radically soft means, you know what? I'm going to be with me and I'm going to figure out the things that matter to me, the things that I want to do, I want to understand who it is that I want to be. Who is it that I am? Because a lot of us don't even know who we are. We know who the world told us to be. So that is what I try to focus on the podcast. Every episode is entitled whatever that topic happens to be as liberation. So season 2 of my podcast kicks off on February 13th. It is like a love letter to Black women. So it is so appropriate to have it launched the day before Valentine's Day, the day before Love Day. But one of the episodes that you'll hear is Hope as Liberation, for example, or vulnerability as liberation. Those types of things liberate you from really like all the things that people told you should be, the things that people tell you that you need to be focused on. And it makes you go inward and think about you and what it is that you need. I also am launching a method that I created, and it's so funny because someone told me this and it's so true. We leave gifts for our future selves all the time. So over a year ago, I created a framework called the FAFO strategy. At the time, and I like outlined it, like I knew what all the letters meant, but I couldn't launch it because I wasn't ready. I hadn't done the work that I needed to do to actually be like, this thing works. And I did that work. And when I did that work, I was really able to outline more in depth, what do all these different steps mean? So F of the strategy is filter the noise. So all of the noise that you're hearing around you and even from yourself, how do you filter through all of that to get to the thing that you need to be hearing? Anchoring your purpose is the A, because I think a lot of us are often wondering, what were we put here to do? Who were we put here to be? And I think that's a really important step. And then flowing with ease. And for me, if it does not feel like ease, I don't want to do it. It feel complicated? Nah, I'm not doing it at all. But I feel like we often opt for things that feel hard, that feel complicated, because if it's too easy, am I doing it right? But probably you are. Probably you are doing it right. And then the O is for own your power. So I'm really looking forward to launching that as a digital course and also a 1-day. I'm calling it an intensive, but somebody told me I don't want to say anything is intensive with Black women because it should be soft. So I don't know what I'll call it, but it's a 1-day something where I will get with a group of Black women and go through that framework of FAFO, and then they will walk away with their own version of their liberation plan, whatever that means for them.
So it's like a 1-day liberation retreat, basically.
Yes, look at you, Amaya. You
It's
free?
Black girl magic. I'm free. Look. Your framework speaks so much. And as you were listing out each of the different names or all of the different acronyms and what they mean in terms of that, all I could think about was just how many Black women need that. And I have had so many conversations with young Black women over the past maybe like year or so, where a lot of Black women, young Black women, feel so disconnected from who they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because society has made it that way, to where they're consistently like it's built in, where there are times where it's like, hey, you're being negative, and they don't even think so, because it's just like, oh, well, you know, around me, this is what's going on. And it is hard to connect to your power, to connect to something that you are growing into and something that you're not as aware of until you start getting around other Black women who are like confident and anchored and have like been through it and blah, blah. And you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I remember when I had a presentation and I had to interview someone, and they assigned me an interviewee, and she was a Black woman, and she was also in DEI. And I interviewed her and I spoke to her, and I left that conversation feeling so scared to touch anything with DEI. I was so scared to touch anything, not because of her, but because I was like, she's accomplishing all of this. She understands all this about DEI. And I was like, I'm a young Black woman right now. And I don't feel like, even though I'm Black and I'm a woman, like, do I feel like I can take on what she's taking on right now? Because I can't even see myself in an open space, in an open world like that, where that opportunity is afforded to me to be able to make an impact like that. Yeah. And once I told someone else that, they were just like, girl, like, we're going to need to go outside or something, because if you're feeling that way, like, what are you talking about right now? And so to see that, one, when I was going through that, not to be alone for one, but two, it just shows me how much work there is to have done in terms of unlearning that.
100%. If I knew the things that I know today when I was in my 20s, girl, I would be a whole nother person. And I just got this level of enlightenment in the last 6 months. Because I've burnt out in the past and then be like, all right, well, all right then. I need to go back to work. I need to do this thing. But late last year, I just couldn't. Like, I was dragging myself out of the bed. Like, I did not want to show up every day. I was tired. I felt overwhelmed. And there was this nagging feeling that there was something else that I was supposed to be doing that I didn't have mentally. I didn't have access to it. My brain was full of fog. It was so much chaos going on in here that I went on leave, which I'm calling a sabbatical. So I went on a sabbatical for 3 months. I spent 60 of those days in my house, unfortunately. I traveled around a little bit, but most of the time was spent in my house. But I've also worked from home for 5 years at this point. So being in the same space wasn't helpful. But at some point I decided, okay, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go like be in a different space, have a change of scenery. And that changed my life. I went on a 16-day solo voyage. It was a Mediterranean voyage from Rome to Miami. And I spent that time by myself. I did do things when I was on the boat, and I decided that I wouldn't take myself too seriously, that I wouldn't show up in perfectionism, that I wouldn't be an overachiever, that I would just take things slow. I would do what felt good for me. And in doing that, I learned a lot of things about myself. I learned that I like puzzles. I learned sushi making. I actually did a painting class. And normally when I've done paint and sips in the past, I'd be so worried about the picture not looking like looking like the example. But I just showed up and just was like, okay, like I'm just here, just painting, no need to be perfect. I even went to trivia knowing that I wouldn't know half of those trivia questions. But it felt good to not take myself too seriously and to not be perfect. After I got back to Miami, I ended up going to Mexico for a few days. I was in Atlanta for a few days, and then I went to visit my family. By the time I got back home, I felt complete. I felt like I understood then who I was supposed to be, how I wanted to show up in the world, what I am called to do. I feel more grounded in those things now because, from what my therapist said, I gave myself 30 days of exposure therapy. I exposed myself to all the things that would normally terrify me. Number one on that list is being solo because it was my very first solo adventure. So she was like, you basically like healed yourself in 30 days because before I went on this adventure, I had an appointment with her and she said, if you had to rate your anxiety from a level of 1 to 10, what would you give it? And I said a 7 before I left. When I talked to her in January, she asked me the same question and I told her 0 because I don't feel anxious about anything. I don't feel anxious about anything because now I know who I am. And before I didn't. I just knew what the world told me I should be.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Slide the playbook over here.
Listen, the FAFO method, I got you.
Writing it down, note to self, okay, wrong. Like
Literally, like I was like, man, that's a long way to go. That's a long time to be on a boat. But I said I need it because it is not helping me to be in my house in the same space and same energy that I was in. That was the reason why I took the sabbatical. I can't. I can't. And it was also great to be on a boat and not have to think about anything. You pay your little money, you get on the boat, everything is included, and you good to go. Like you don't have to think about meals, you don't have to think about activities, you don't have to think about safety because everything is there for you. You're being monitored. It was great to not have to think about anything. I just need to get up and just, do I want to lay in the bed all day? Do I want to sit on the balcony? Do I want a massage? What kind of activities do I want to do today? Like that's all that I thought about. And it was great.
sounds great. It sounds healing, but it also sounds freeing. And something that I've heard multiple Black women talk about, that when the first Black woman said it to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like this should be in textbooks. Because I literally was like, that is crazy. But it's something we all know once someone says it to us or like it clicks. Allowing yourself permission, the art of permission. And I was like, whoa, new concept. The art of permission, the art of allowance, the art of just allowing yourself to be and giving yourself permission to do absolutely nothing. I come from a background where doing nothing does not exist. Like I come from a family of hard workers, hard hustlers, intelligent change makers. So it's like going through that. And then I looked at myself and I was like, my boyfriend, he said, hey, you should relax. And I said, I don't know that vocabulary word. That's a big word for Elmo. What is that? Like
that's a good man, Savannah. Like, keep him.
Yes. When I just thought about like that simple 5-letter word, and I could tell you like any other words. I could tell you almost all the elements on the periodic table. I could tell you the capitals of every single state. I could go head to toe with the Kila and the B any day. But the word relax, took me all the way out.
Yeah.
And knowing that is something that just becomes like an awakening point, especially for us when we have the freedom, the liberation to do nothing, and how much that impacts us to continue fueling our missions of doing something. Because
Yeah.
burning out and then being like, okay, well, we got to get back up and do something. And then continuously doing that cycle until you can't get up anymore, and
Yeah.
realizing staying still was the thing that could probably help you in the first place.
Yes.
Fine.
1,000%. And it seems backwards. It seems like, why would I sit here when I should be doing something? What do you mean being is more important than doing? But that's capitalism, is white supremacy culture, is what we have been taught, that it means you are valuable when you are productive. And I think that if we consider productivity being still, so then we can do more, because then we can see more, we can think more. Because for me, I couldn't see beyond my hands. Literally. Like I was like, well, what is the path? I have no idea. What am I supposed to be doing? Who am I supposed to be? And I couldn't see anything. But once I was around different people in a different environment, I was like, wait a minute, I have so many options and choices. How did I not see all of this before? It was because I was not still, because I was trying to do a bunch of stuff, and it kept me from really seeing my true path.
And that is interesting to me in terms of talking about how far you've come, even in just the past 60 days, and how far you've come from having that ridiculous $11 an hour thrown in your face, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You touched on something earlier about like your action word of the year, like your action theme for 2024. From the beginning of 2024 to where you are now, or even the end of 2024, how did that word or that action change? What did it become after you took your healing process?
It became real. I think when we think about affirmations, for example, you say affirmations, but sometimes you don't believe them until you've said them enough times until you believe them. And I think showing up every week, recording those episodes and having those conversations and reminding myself that liberation can look different. It can look many different ways. Life doesn't have to be perfect for me to experience liberation. And yeah, I kind of believed it in the beginning, but as time went on, I began to believe. So by the end of the year, when I physically felt liberated, mentally and emotionally felt liberated, it became real. And that's like the best way I can explain it.
Mm-hmm. It feels like there's this gap. You don't know what it is, but you know it's something that needs to be closed, something needs to be filled, it's something. And it's so common within Black women, especially. And having the space where the theme that helps you get to that space where things can resolve itself almost, and find that harmony that you've been looking for, because we're also disconnected, trying to piece together other things for other people, or like you said, trying to save the world. And we're bridging gaps that aren't even our own. But when we do bridge our own gaps, there is so much more to ourselves that we have not discovered.
Amen. Let the church say amen.
This has been absolutely, literally liberating to hear and have this discussion with you on what it's like reframing parts of what being a Black woman is. Those conversations, it's kind of like our own kind of unspoken, unsaid, but it's just like when someone says girl in like a certain tone, you know exactly what she's talking about. We just said girl for like 45 minutes.
We truly did. We did. And I really appreciate you thinking of me to come on your podcast. It is my pleasure to be here and to share this story. And I hope that the folks who are listening to it, who are early career, can take that and learn from some of the things that I've learned at 39 years old. Like after I turned 39, I learned, hey girl, you need to take care of yourself. You need to focus on you. I can't even imagine like how powerful, how dangerous you will be as an early career person having that information and moving from that space as you navigate the world, your career, relationships, whatever it is that you're navigating, taking that framework with you to understand that I need to focus on me. And it's not selfish. You have to do that in order to be clear about where you're going.
Exactly. And make sure y'all follow her framework too, y'all. Let's not forget. Go back to where it was introduced in the episode. Go to the timestamp.
Yep.
In all seriousness, again, thank you so much for sharing your story, even unheard of parts that I really appreciate you feeling like you can share that here with me and having a space where you're able to share in that way. I'm so honored and appreciative that I had the opportunity to be able to have you on the podcast and to continue just sharing your words of wisdom and sharing your very impactful energy, your infectious energy that comes across in a very impactful way. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to continue just being able to see your success overall, whether that's on LinkedIn or wherever you may go. We appreciate you. I'm going to speak for the Young Black Women Collective. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you doing the work that you do.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Intentional Intern Podcast. We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a boost of motivation to take on your career journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share it with your network. Connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback fuels our next great episode. Until next time, stay intentional, keep growing, and keep shining bright. See you in the next episode.